What would you do if the person you trusted most spun a web of lies so cruel it threatened to unravel your entire family? David Harper stood in the dim glow of his living room, staring at the wedding photo on the mantel. His wife, Laura, smiled back at him from the frame, her eyes radiant with a love he thought he knew. But now, that same woman had orchestrated a stunt so vicious it left him questioning everything, not just their marriage, but the very foundation of their family. The air felt thick with betrayal as he replayed the events that had spiraled out of control, pulling their teenage son, Ethan, into a mess that was now exploding in ways no one could have predicted. It started 3 weeks ago, innocently enough, at a neighborhood barbecue. The Harpers' cul-de-sac was alive with laughter, the clink of glasses, and the sizzle of burgers on the grill. Laura, always the social butterfly, flitted between guests, her laughter bright and infectious. David watched her with pride, unaware of the plan she was hatching with her old college friend, Karen, and Karen's 17-year-old daughter, Mia. Mia was a quiet girl, with wide, doe-like eyes and a shy smile that hid a sharper edge. David had always found her polite but distant, a kid who seemed to carry secrets she never shared. He had no idea she'd become the centerpiece of Laura's scheme. Laura's idea was born out of a twisted sense of loyalty, or so she'd later claim. Karen had confided in her that Mia was struggling at school, her grades slipping as she fell in with a rough crowd. Laura, ever the fixer, proposed a plan to teach Mia a lesson. The stunt was simple but cruel. Laura would pretend to catch Mia stealing from their home, staging a confrontation to scare her straight. She'd plant a valuable bracelet in Mia's bag, call her out in front of others, and let the embarrassment jolt Mia back to her senses. David was never told. Neither was Ethan, their 16-year-old son, who had quietly developed a crush on Mia over the past year. The plan unfolded at the Harpers' house during a movie night for the neighborhood teens. Laura had invited Mia, Ethan, and a few others, setting the stage with meticulous care. David was out of town on a work trip, oblivious to the drama brewing. As the kids watched a horror flick in the basement, Laura slipped upstairs, placed her mother's heirloom bracelet in Mia's backpack, and waited. When the movie ended, she made a show of noticing the missing jewelry, her voice trembling with feigned shock. "Mia, what's in your bag?" she asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room froze. Mia's face flushed as Laura pulled out the bracelet, holding it up like evidence in court. The other kids gasped, their whispers cutting through the silence. Mia stammered, tears welling up, insisting she hadn't touched it. Ethan, sitting nearby, looked horrified, his eyes darting between his mother and the girl he liked. But Laura didn't stop there. She leaned into the performance, her voice rising with accusations, calling Mia a thief and demanding she leave. Mia fled, sobbing, as the other teens stared in stunned silence. Ethan tried to follow her, but Laura grabbed his arm, whispering, "She's not who you think she is." The damage was done. By morning, the story had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Mia, the thief, humiliated and shunned. David returned home to find Ethan withdrawn, refusing to talk, and Laura oddly dismissive of the whole affair. "It was just a misunderstanding," she said, brushing it off. But something in her tone gnawed at him. Days later, the twist came, one David never saw coming. Karen, Mia's mother, showed up at their doorstep, her face pale with fury. She hadn't been in on the full plan. Laura had pitched the idea as a gentle nudge, not a public shaming. Karen revealed that Mia, already fragile from bullying at school, had spiraled into a deep depression after the incident. She'd stopped eating, locked herself in her room, and was talking about running away. Worse, Karen had found texts on Mia's phone, texts from Ethan, begging her to explain, saying he didn't believe she'd steal, offering to help. Ethan, it turned out, had been secretly meeting Mia, trying to comfort her, and their bond had deepened in the aftermath. David's heart sank. His son was caught in the crossfire of his wife's reckless stunt. The confrontation that followed was brutal. David demanded answers from Laura, who finally confessed. "I was trying to help," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "Karen was desperate, and I thought a little scare would get Mia back on track." But her words rang hollow. The stunt wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal, not only of Mia but of their own son, who was now entangled in a mess of emotions he didn't fully understand. Ethan's loyalty to Mia was pulling him away from his mother, and David could see the fracture in their family widening by the day. As the weeks passed, the fallout grew uglier. Mia's school caught wind of the theft, and she faced disciplinary hearings, her reputation in tatters. Ethan, furious with Laura, started sneaking out to see Mia, defying his parents' rules. David tried to mediate, but he was drowning in his own anger. How could Laura, the woman he'd loved for 20 years, orchestrate something so cruel? And why hadn't she trusted him enough to tell him? The neighborhood, once a tight-knit community, was now divided, with some siding with Laura's tough love approach and others condemning her for targeting a vulnerable teen. Then came the second twister revelation that turned David's world upside down. One evening, as he sifted through old emails, trying to piece together Laura's motives, he found an exchange between her and Karen from months earlier. It wasn't just about Mia's behavior. Laura had written, "If Mia's out of the picture, maybe Ethan will focus on school instead of her." The words hit like a punch. This wasn't just about helping Mia, it was about controlling Ethan, steering him away from a girl Laura deemed trouble. The stunt wasn't a misguided act of kindness, it was a calculated move to manipulate their son's life. David confronted Laura again, this time with the email in hand. She broke down, admitting she'd been worried about Ethan's obsession with Mia, fearing it would derail his future. "I just wanted to protect him," she sobbed. But David saw it for what it was, a betrayal of trust, not just of him, but of their son's heart. The argument ended with Laura sleeping in the guest room, the space between them growing colder each day. Now, the situation was blowing up in ways David couldn't control. Ethan, torn between his love for Mia and his loyalty to his family, was acting out, skipping school, talking back, and retreating into silence at home. Mia's family was considering legal action, claiming emotional distress. The neighborhood was a minefield of gossip and judgment. David felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, watching his family crumble. He wondered if he could have stopped it, if he'd noticed Laura's secrecy sooner, if he'd been more present for Ethan, if he'd questioned the perfect image of their life. In the quiet moments, David thought about forgiveness. Could he rebuild trust with Laura? Could he help Ethan navigate the pain of first love tangled in betrayal? Could he mend the rift with Mia's family? The answers weren't clear, but one thing was, love, even when flawed, demanded accountability. He reached out to Mia's parents, offering an apology and a promise to make things right. He sat Ethan down, listening to his anger and his love for Mia without judgment. And he faced Laura, not with accusations, but with a question: how do we fix this together? The road ahead was uncertain, but David clung to a fragile hope. Families could break, but they could also heal, not perfectly, but enough to move forward. As he looked at that wedding photo again, he saw not just the past, but a flicker of possibility, a chance to rebuild, not on lies, but on truth, however painful it might be.